then finally, the role of government. And certainly in ours, for those of you who are in this country, we've had, I don't know if I would call it a debate, but certainly have been a lot of sound bites about the role of government, let's put it that way. And there's a lot of people in our country who don't have much hope for what government could do. A lot of people think it's mainly part of the problem, and it certainly can be. But we said before, if we take the creation mandate seriously, then we have to understand that there's an important and positive role for government, and our advocacy will flow out of what we think that is. But we also then need to have factual analysis. And this, when I ask about what are the vital signs, okay, you can talk about maternal mortality or infant mortality or spread of disease and other things, but understanding the realities and the data is very important, because if we don't, we can propose solutions that actually are not solving the real problem. And then we need to interpret the data and discern what the patterns are. And this is an area where Christians have not always been real strong, because oftentimes, at least in the things that come across my desk, I'll read some very wild claims that seem to be probably were made up by a fundraiser rather than a practitioner. But those kind of things, if you present those to government, you quickly lose credibility, or if you are taken seriously, it could lead to wrong decisions. So the factual part is also very important. Then you need some kind of a political philosophy as well, because you can't do detailed study every day, every time you get an email saying, they're about to vote on the budget for health programs. You don't have time to go back and read long books of political philosophy. So you have to have some understanding about how you think government works and how decisions are made, how power is exercised, how to influence the process. You need to have some guiding principles on how Christians do that in light of the fact that Jesus is Lord and we are part of the kingdom of God. Not necessarily does it mean that you have to become partisan, although some individuals are certainly called to partisan involvement, I think, in our communal life. Probably as in our institutions, we don't want to be partisan in most cases, but we still need to have some understanding of political philosophy and how things work. And we have to allow for strange bedfellows, because in the mixed up, crazy world that we live in and work in, we're going to find that there are people who share some of our values and some of our views, and completely disagree with us in other areas. And if you only want to work with people who completely agree with you, it's going to be a very lonely business. Now, sometimes, of course, people are criticized and they say, well, how could you be supporting that when so-and-so isn't supporting that? We know what they're all about. But if you can keep in mind that even if you agree on only 1 out of 10 things, you can still work together on that thing. And frequently, our impact is magnified when we can pull together an unlikely coalition and say, well, we may not agree on most things, but on this one thing we all agree. Everybody agrees, so it must be right, because these people and these people are saying the same thing. So I think just don't be afraid of that. All right, then we need to propose solutions, and they should be thoughtful, and they need to be presented in a way that is capable of winning support. Of course, not everyone will share our Christian convictions, but we know because of common grace, we believe that people are sufficiently gifted by God to be able to work together for the common good, even though they may fall far short of God's intentions in many ways. Then what we propose should be something that is practical, it could actually work and be implemented. And we can never completely get away from this issue of unintended consequences. It's always it's a part of our limited knowledge. No one can know for sure what's going to happen if we do X. Even if X is a good thing, there might be some bad things that happen as a result. I was reading, you probably know recently, there's been a debate about whether the smallpox virus should be destroyed or not. And, a lot of people are saying, well, of course, get rid of the thing because it could start a big epidemic again. And then other people say, well, no, if we might need it to study in case something else comes up, and it could actually provide a cure for something else. Who knows? So, I don't know which side is right myself. But most issues are like this: that there's one side and then there's another. And even if we passionately believe something is the solution to everything, it could well be that there's some problems that we haven't thought of. So just good to aware of that. All right, so that leads us into the issue of humility. We all are sinners, hopefully saved by grace. And we realize that perfect solutions are unattainable. So you may have in your mind how the public health system should work in this world, but it can't be done. I promise you, it can't be done perfectly. So our choices are between various imperfections, and we need to advocate for the principles we think are good, but we need to also be prepared to accept what we can get, improvements that can be made, even if we believe they're not perfect, because it involves compromise and with people from many different points of view. Then we don't expect politics to solve more than it can. So if we are involved in political advocacy, we want to do what we can, but we don't expect that that's the be-all, end-all that's going to solve the whole problem. So we have a modest view of our possibilities. And again, we think about the unintended consequences that should keep us all humble. And then finally, secondly, civility. The way in which we interact and disagree, we need to show respect for our partners. And frequently, even if we all are concerned about international health, we don't always agree with one another, and sometimes we can be very disrespectful in the way that we talk about the people in the next room. And we need not to do that. We also need to respect today's opponents. I say today's opponents because today's opponents are probably our partners tomorrow on a different issue. So we need to be careful, even in talking about people who are uncivil. We ought not to attack them in an uncivil way. I mentioned this down here, this civility covenant that a number was put together a year or so ago. And as we were drafting, this is a statement, that was decrying all the people who are attacking each other in the Congress. And as we read through the first draft, we realized that our statement itself was not very civil. So we were actually, saying, how could those stupid people, not know how to behave as politicians? So we had to do some serious editing, and I hope we got it right. But this is a covenant that you can also sign if you're interested. And then we recognize that Christian fellowship should transcend politics. What unites us is much greater than what divides us. So that in the church there needs to be room for Republicans and Democrats. There needs to be room for people that are concerned about different issues and have different ideas on the same issues. If not, then we have missed something very important, because politics has a role, but it should never be at the top of our list. And so we often feel that civility has been lost, but we're hoping to rediscover it. Okay, in terms of the structures of public life, we are blessed to live in a representative democracy, and we need to work on having a just government, protect our fundamental liberties, and then have health systems that work. So just a few things about this. We are one of 115 countries in the world that has an electoral democracy, and according to Freedom House, we're one of 87 quote-unquote free countries in the world. So with all of our imperfections, we're blessed to be in a place where there are quite a few possibilities. Of course, money is a big complicating factor in our public life that is a serious distortion many times. But this is again the situation that we have to work in. We need to do the best we can within it. And recognize there's a whole range of methods available to us to influence legislatures, administrators, even the courts, as well as that whole other list of actors, from individuals, families, communities, businesses. There's one recent example in the business area. Denny has joined a group which is putting pressure on Major League Baseball to ban chewing tobacco from the game. And we call it knock tobacco out of the park. So, Major League Baseball is not a branch of government, although they sometimes act like it. But they're doing something which is impacting health, because young boys see these stars, chewing and spitting on television, and they think, well, if they can do it, it even helps your game. So we are putting pressure on them to do that. So there's a whole range of things we can do with a whole range of factors, which we can discuss more if you like. Then in terms of just government, fair and transparent processes are important. Maintaining public order. And then especially a mark of just government is one that provides for the needs of the poor. And I just put up this website, which I commend to all of you, the circleofprotection.org, is an effort by a wide range of Christian leaders to call our government to account as we are dealing with these very serious budget pressures. And we all agree that it's important to balance our budget and reduce our deficits. And that if we don't, it's going to actually cause problems for the poor, not least the poor. But the way in which to do that is very critical. In the past, we've had a bipartisan and very strong commitment to not balancing the budget affects the poor. In the 1990s, 3 times we had major budget cutting and deficit reduction exercises, all of which exempted poverty programs from the cuts. This is domestically, it covered in every case international programs. And the Bowles-Simpson Commission that recently came out with deficit reduction proposals also had that as one of their commitments. Unfortunately, in the dialogues now between the White House and the Congress, we don't hear that at all. We don't actually hear anything about the poor at all. We hear advocates for the rich, and we hear advocates for the middle class battling it out, but nobody's really advocating for the poor. So if you all want to do something, I think that's a good place to start. All right, and in terms of fundamental liberty, our ability to advocacy is grounded in our free speech and free exercise, the First Amendment rights and the other Bill of Rights freedoms that we have. So these are important commitments that need to be upheld, not only for ourselves, but for the future of our country. Then in terms of health systems, just a few things I think that are important to look at: both access, the quality of care, the way in which it's supported, and the sustainability. And actually in the budget debates, it's not always, I think, clearly brought into view, but the primary issue that's driving our budget problems are health issues. More than half of the money is spent on poverty-focused programs is actually not money that's given to poor people, it's money that's given to doctors, hospitals, laboratories, and others for health care. And so moving to the future, it's continuing to grow at a faster rate than our economy, faster than our population, aging, and so on. So these are important issues to think about in terms of health ethics.